welcome to this podcast. This podcast episode is about what I call the sixth pillar of the mentorship. In case you're wondering, what is this woman talking about? The mentorship is my one-on-one coaching program that is based on 6 pillars, 6 themes or topics or energies that are pillars in my life and therefore pillars in the mentorship, in the coaching program that I offer. And so in the last 5 episodes, I've been introducing the different pillars ranging from joy, unconditional love, to leadership and a few more. And today I want to introduce you to the last one, which is clarity. And I can imagine that when you hear the word clarity, you might wonder why I didn't start with it, because it seems that clarity is a good start of things or a good way to begin things. But to me, this pillar, the one of clarity, is actually the most abstract one of all 6 of them. And that's why I wanted to keep it for the last one. And also, in case you've heard the other podcasts already, you might notice that slowly we've been making a transition from themes like joy and love and leadership that are quite obvious in the way that when I say those words you already sort of know what I'm talking about, but then in the podcast we dive deeper, and then going to what I call the bridge, and then to devotion and clarity. And devotion is also a topic that's just it's almost weird to put it in words, and so is clarity. And that's why there's such beautiful last pillars, because of their just a little reminding, you will hear my dog in the background with her little nails on the floor. Clarity is such an important... Okay, let's start again. Welcome to this podcast episode about the theme clarity. And the reason why I'm talking about clarity today is because it's the 6th pillar in the mentorship, my one-on-one coaching program. And the last couple of episodes I've been dedicating to these pillars. So these 6 pillars are basically the themes or the topics or the energies that carry the structure of the mentorship. And because they are pillars in my life, they also had to be pillars in the mentorship, because the mentorship is basically a reflection of who I am and how I am in this life and how I work. And therefore I felt it was a beautiful way to introduce these to you by recording podcasts or videos about it, so that you can get a taste of each of these energies and take from it whatever you want or can take from it. And so the final pillar, the 6th one, is clarity. And I can imagine that when you hear that this is the final pillar, you might be wondering why I didn't start with clarity. Because clarity seems to be a beautiful way to start things before going on, before making decisions or starting new projects, that there needs to be some clarity. And yes, I definitely agree with this, but at the same time, to me, clarity is actually the most abstract pillar of all 6 of them. The last few pillars, or the first ones, actually have been joy, unconditional love, and leadership, which is sort of straightforward. Then we went into the bridge, which also marks sort of the transition from the more obvious themes to the more abstract themes. Last week we spoke about devotion, a topic that it's just weird actually to give words to it. It's really about an experience, and so for me is clarity as well. And so what I will be trying in this episode is that I'm gonna give you a taste, as I always do in these episodes, of what clarity means like to me. I will give you examples from my life, maybe some examples from my clients. I never really know upfront how or what I will be speaking about. But definitely we will be going through the different layers or the different dimensions of clarity, starting in maybe a more obvious way and then going towards the more abstract side of clarity, so that you get the whole picture and that you get what it is that I'm talking about. So clarity, as I just mentioned, it might sound logical that clarity is something that you want before you start doing things. And I think, and I know from my own experience and also what I see with the people that I work with, is that clarity is such an important aspect in our lives if you want to live your life consciously, if you want to make most of this life. And by making most of this life, I don't mean that you have to become the best at everything you do. I don't mean that you have to have some crazy ass bucket list that you need to cross off before you're 30. By making the most of your life, I mean that this life has so much to offer. This human body that we have has so much potential. There's so many experiences and dimensions to life that are just so extraordinary that it would be a waste to not try to attempt to experience those. And that's what I'm talking about when I say make the most out of this life, because it's just a brief adventure. It's really quite short. It goes by quite quickly. And it's such a gift, and it would be such a waste if we don't at least attempt to discover it and try it and experience it. And so what I see with a lot of my clients, and what I also know from my own endeavor, so to say, is that it's really important to have some clarity about yourself in the first place. Who am I? What are my talents? What makes me happy? Such simple questions, but whenever I ask them to myself, and I do this on a regular basis, or when I ask this to my clients, there's always such a big effect, actually. Whenever I'm lost, whenever I'm confused, for example, in my business, I feel that things are not running the way I would like them to run, or I'm sort of searching for, or I feel like something needs to change, but I don't know really what it is, I always ask myself the question, what do I want to do? And it's such a simple and such a powerful question. And it's really, I think we underestimate the impact of this question, because somewhere in our society and the way we're brought up, we've been taught that for whatever reason, it's not good enough to just do the things that make you happy. There needs to be some sort of struggle and hustle, and it needs to be really hard and intense, and then it's okay to do it. But really, if you ask yourself the question, what do I want to do? What brings me joy? It will give you so much clarity on the next step in your life. And I also talked more about this in the podcast about joy. That joy is such a beautiful guidance, actually. It's such a beautiful way to give direction to your life in the moments that you are lacking clarity. I also had a moment where I literally wrote down the 10 things that bring me joy, or more even, super basic stuff, food, animals, dancing, and a bunch more. And based on this, I actually was able to make some pretty big decisions within my business to turn things around and lead them in a way that was aligned with me, actually. So this is one aspect of clarity. What brings you joy? The other aspect is, what are your talents? What are you good at? And talents are something that, again, we tend to oversee them, or we tend to not notice them because they come naturally to us. It's only often when other people tell you, you're actually really good at that, or I wish I would be able to do that, that we notice like, I never realized, but actually I am really good at this, and I didn't know before that this is not something that other people naturally can do. So what are your talents? What are you good at? These are areas in which it's really important to get some clarity, because they will help you choose the course of your life. They will help you to choose directions whenever you're on a crossroad and trying to understand, where am I going and why am I going there? So what makes you happy? What are you good at? And what is your why? Getting clarity on why do you do the things that you're doing. Now on a business level, having a why is probably the biggest drive that you can possibly have. Why do you get up in the morning and do your job? And if you don't know why, then maybe the job, I'm sorry to say so, but maybe this is not your job, the job that you should be doing. for me, and I talk a lot about it in the last episode, devotion. My why is my devotion to life, actually, and I really want all the people that I work with to have these experiences, to have these tastes, to have these experiences of what life really is about. This is the reason why I'm so happy to record these podcasts, why when I speak with my clients, I'm so excited. When I look at my calendar, I'm like, yes, tonight I have a session with him or her. I'm really, really devoted to them and to life, and this is my why, this is my drive. This is also the reason why I can get up early in the morning to spend 1.5 hours on my morning practice, because my why is I want to experience life in its full capacity. So getting clarity on why do you do the things that you do. And I think this is also a nice little bridge to, let's say, the next level or the next dimension of clarity, getting slightly more abstract. Why do you do the things you do is also a way to start to see which of the things that you're doing are you doing because it's an automatism. I hope that's a word. Things that you do without thinking about it, things that you do because it's a habit, things that you do because you think you need to do them for whatever reason. Basically things that you do unconsciously without really maybe even wanting to do them. And this is where we enter the realm of karma, of freedom, of understanding that you as a person in any moment in your life have the ability to decide what you want to do. Of course, there are certain limitations to maybe financially or socially or like the society that you're in. Of course, there's always external situations that we need to take into account. But in general, you in every moment of your life have the ability to make a conscious decision. And this is the very essence of empowerment. This is the very essence of freedom. So gaining clarity on which things in my life am I doing unconsciously or without deciding that I want to do this. And I can give you a few examples of things that happen with all of us. For example, I know some people who really feel like they cannot start their day without drinking coffee. And I can promise you this, your body will survive beautifully without drinking coffee. Of course, if you stop drinking coffee, then there's going to be some physical, maybe even emotional discomfort. But in general, you don't need coffee to survive. Another example would be on an emotional or psychological level. When someone gives you a compliment, that automatically you feel that you have to give a compliment back. Or that automatically you come up with reasons why this is not true. Is this helping you? Is this helping the situation? Is this nice for the other person? No, it's not, but it's an automatic response for whatever reason. I'm sure there's a whole story behind it, why you taught yourself or to do this or why you had to do this when you were younger. Leaving that aside, it's an automatic response. Something that you don't think about, you just do it. And this is what I mean with a certain dimension of clarity, understanding that there are certain behaviors in your life that do not come from conscious decisions, but they come from patterns, from habits, from karma, from mechanisms that you've built or created for whatever reason. And I don't say that the reasons aren't legit. We all find ways to protect ourselves and to not get hurt. I'm just saying that there is a point in your life when you start to see that this is happening, when you gain the clarity on the fact that you are repeating certain patterns, certain behaviors, that in that moment, the moment that you understand that this is a pattern, you can decide, do I want this or do I not want this? And according to that, you can act. And this is the great important difference between reacting and acting. Most people, most of their lives are reacting. Something happens, they react. They react. They see something, they react. They hear, they react. It's a constant blah, blah, blah. Sort of no filter kind of thing. Whereas acting means that you take a moment, doesn't need to be long, can be long, doesn't have to be long, to understand what's happening. You notice the sensation within you, so you notice that if something happens, that maybe your initial reaction would be to say, oh, but that's not true, or to get angry, or maybe to even shy away and make yourself small. And in that moment, when you realize that this is a reaction that you're not choosing, but that's just happening for whatever reasons, you can decide, do I want to react like this? If yes, beautiful, go for it. If no, also beautiful. How do I want to act instead? And to me, this is one of the most important forms of clarity, when you understand that there's so much more freedom within your life than you have probably been aware of. Every time you do something, every time you react, every time you choose something, these are all moments in which you can decide. You have the freedom to decide. Another example of things that happen automatically, that blur our vision, that do not support clarity, are expectations. Expectations and the idea that you know everything. Expectations and prejudice, I find this a very difficult word to pronounce, prejudices, vooroordelen. Expectations are just a really intense way of the mind to completely limit you, to completely limit your experience of life. Expectations are based on things that you already know. Expectations are based on experiences you had in the past, on experiences that other people have, and are sort of a recycled version of the things that you already know, and then you project it forward, and this is what you expect. Leaving no space for things that you don't know. If all your expectations are based on the things that you've seen with yourself or you've seen with the people around you, then it's quite limited, isn't it? And there's this beautiful quote that I heard from my teacher once, who said, not knowing is the most beautiful state to be in. Because the moment you think that you know everything is the moment that you limit yourself. And as long as you do not know, everything is possible. As long as you do not know, everything is possible. And I love this quote so much, because we human beings, we have such a strong tendency to understand and to control and to manage. And if we feel that we're out of control, we get anxious. If that happens to you, don't worry, you're not strange. It's an absolute common reaction, but also this is one that you can notice and understand, like, okay, I feel out of control right now. I don't know what the future might hold. Let's say for your career, for example. I don't know what the future might hold. Is it scary? Yes, it's scary. I feel quite anxious. I feel some tension, but at the same time, not knowing means that anything is possible. So how do I take my next step? What do I want to do? What am I good at? What is my why? Bringing those beautiful questions back again. So as long as you do not know, it means everything is possible. And so expectations and prejudices are ways of the mind to create some, let's say, mental or psychological comfort, because you can put people in boxes, you can put experiences within frameworks that you know. And so for the mind it's really good, you know. For the ego it's really yummy because it's clear, it's like you can have an overview, you can understand, and it's not too overwhelming. But at the same time, what they do is limit your experience. Same with prejudices. I'm gonna find another word for this, because otherwise this whole podcast is gonna be me laughing about one word. The moment you think you know a person, or you think you know that this is how they should behave, is the moment you leave, you block yourself from having any other experience, and also you take away the joy from the situation. You take away the possibility of that person maybe being different, or that the situation might pan out differently. And I'm going to give you a little example. I'm going to try to give words to it as well as possible. Last weekend I was on a sort of hippie yoga meditation kind of festival. It was really funny because it's a type of festival. It was really lovely. It was beautifully made, a small festival in the forest, and so much love for detail, and everyone was lovely, and the food was delicious, and it was really wonderful. And at the same time, this is not a festival that I usually would go to. I went there with my partner and my dog because I won tickets, so it was a beautiful coincidence. The reason why I usually don't go to festivals like that is because the way spirituality is presented, worked with, is just a way that doesn't align with how I see things and how I embody it or work with it. There were many yoga workshops. For me, many of those things don't actually have to do with yoga. I joined one workshop in which certain practices were done, and we were asked to be together in a certain way with different people, and that was a way that I found quite uncomfortable, and something that I would personally never ask the people that I work with to do. Nothing bad happened at all. It was very loving, it was very respecting. It was just a way that didn't align with me, in such a way that I also felt this is not something that is uncomfortable, and I should just deal with it and sort of free myself from this limitation. I felt this is not for me, very clearly. So knowing that this festival wasn't really going to be my thing, I knew from the beginning that I would have quite a lot of expectations about how the festival was going to be. I knew I would have a lot of expectations about how people were going to be. And yes, a lot of those expectations were true in my point of view, in my expectation, in my experience. But also I noticed that because I went onto this festival and into these workshops, and I sat with them by the campfire with all the people around me, I could tell that they were blocking, they were limiting my experience in such a way that I was less open to see all the things that I would enjoy. I was less open to see the people that would align with who I am as a person. So it limited me, and it gave me some sort of hyper focus on the things that didn't feel right for me. Again, I want to make it very clear, if you're in a situation where things are not feeling right for you, it doesn't mean that you have to stay. It's just, in this case, it was a very innocent example, because it was a lovely space anyway. And also I really felt my ego being punched right back in the face for like, here, you know, look at your expectations, look at how you are limiting yourself with these beliefs, look at how you're limiting your own joy. So for me, it was a really good sort of wake-up call, by being put in a place that I would normally avoid, being put in the place of which I had so many expectations and prejudices, to then see, wow, the impact that my own mind has on my experience is rather large. And it was it gave me clarity on the impact that these frameworks, these expectations have, and it gave me clarity on how they limit my experience. And the reason why I'm sharing it is because this is also a dimension of clarity again, understanding where do you have, probably for yourself, invisible frames build up, invisible stories written down about other people or about certain situations that feel lovely for your mind and therefore for your ego, but in fact are taking away the possibility for something more and something beautiful. And so this is where we make the transition also from, and this is a little text that I wrote on my website. For me, clarity is about transitioning from knowledge to a deep knowing. It's from, having gathered knowledge by maybe reading books or doing workshops to an embodied knowing, which is wisdom. It's when you combine experience with knowledge and you make it into wisdom. And at the same time, it's going from knowledge, so knowing things, to intuition, which is when you actually put the mind aside. And putting the mind aside can only be done when you actually realize when the mind is being active. So this was an example of me on this festival, very clearly, in such a way that I was almost annoyed by it. My mind was playing tricks. And in the moment you understand that the mind is active, or for example, when you receive a compliment and you put it away or whatever, when the mind is being active, to then understand, okay, I hear you, I see you, but I put it aside and instead I open up for something else. So moving from knowing to intuition, something that goes beyond knowing, something that rationally might not make sense. And at the same time, to take it one step further, it's about moving from knowing or from intuition to a place of not knowing. Because as long as you do not know, everything is possible. And moreover, it's such a misconception and also human arrogance, and I get it because I'm also human, to think that we know. And this merges well with the last episode about devotion, in which I speak about my devotion, how I see things, and what devotion means to me. And that, for example, we don't even know how our own body works. We don't even know how the universe works. There's so much knowledge for sure, but when we zoom in or when we zoom out, there's so much that we do not know. And to think as a human being that you figured it out, that you know, is logical, but also arrogant and limiting. And it's this beautiful space of not knowing that you might consider, if you just take a moment to really connect with the sense of, actually, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And this is literally call it a mantra or whatever, or a sentence that I tell myself on a regular basis, or I try to remind myself to tell myself in the mornings. When I wake up, I'll tell myself, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Because this opens up everything. When you start your day understanding that you don't know anything, means that everything can happen. So it's this beautiful space of not knowing, which is it goes completely against our, the needs of our mind, because it wants to know and control everything. But when we allow ourselves to really connect with not knowing, this space opens up that you might associate with silence, with nothingness. And the beauty of it is that within this silence, within this nothingness, there's everything. And this is the reason why clarity is the last pillar of the mentorship. Because it's this abstract, it's this irrational, it's this obvious and confusing. Clarity is a state of not knowing, allowing the space to be in such a way that everything is possible. A space that resembles or that is silence, that is nothingness, and at the same time it's everything. So I think I would just like to leave it here. And ask you to just, once this episode is done, maybe take a moment to let this sink in. That there's different dimensions to clarity. There's a few that are very practical. There's a dimension that when you get that one, you understand that there's so much freedom in your life. There's a dimension when you get that one, you start to see where you are completely limiting yourself. And there's a dimension to it where you understand when you connect with that one, you don't even have to understand, you cannot understand. There's a dimension when you connect with it, that there's nothing and everything at the same time. And this goes beyond anything you know. It doesn't get bigger than that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me until the very end. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out. And I hope to reach you to the next podcast soon.